So in the early 80s, before WrestleMania, wrestling and its legitimacy was sometimes put into question, and it was as a question out into the general public. And John Stossel of 2020 went to Madison Square Garden to talk about the phenomenon that was the boom of pro wrestling, and if people thought it was legitimate, as it wasn't what it is today. He talked to people like soccer moms and girlfriends with their other friends who went, businessmen, grandmothers, and other people who you wouldn't affiliate as big professional wrestling fans today who went to wrestling then. And most of them felt what they were seeing was legitimate, is what they told John Stossel of 2020. And it's probably the evolution of professional wrestling, and when people kind of saw behind the curtain as to why wrestling today is less grandmothers and businessmen as it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s as what it is to now. Comic book nerds, hobbyists, people who are into those kind of different things when it comes to collecting and autographs, and same world as horror movie fans and punk rock fans and comic book fans, etc. Right? When wrestlers go, they don't normally go to regular sports conventions. They go to like hobbyist conventions to meet fans. Well, the reason I bring that up is because those kind of people were interested in this last weekend's what I like to call sports entertainment boxing match between Mike Tyson and Logan Paul that happened at AT&T Stadium.
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul. Well, we'll talk Logan Paul in a little bit, but Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, and the boxing match. And if you watched our video or listened to our podcast last week that kind of previewed this a little bit, I was under the impression of exactly what happened was going to happen. Right? I thought that what happened was exactly what was going to happen. Nothing surprised me because I knew that this couldn't have been booked any better than by Vincent Kennedy McMahon himself in 1983 or 1985, right? This was WrestleMania 3 promotion to me, Andre versus Hogan. And while that time, there was a lot of people out there who believed that wrestling still had legitimacy. I wonder why in the year 2024, people like me seem to be in the rarity, right? I was not upset by the fight because I saw exactly what I thought I was going to saw. So Brandon, maybe you can shed some light. Why on earth did the general public, 70,000 plus people at AT&T Stadium, what did they see and why did they believe this to be a legitimate fight when I saw this as a Vince McMahon's promotion-esque the entire time?
Well, it's because you're already seasoned to it because you're a wrestling fan, so you're already kind of programmed. Your mind works that way. Mine does too, but at the same time, the way I look at that, how I look at that fight and how I looked at it going in was, is this just a glorified exhibition or are we actually going to see a real fight? And that's why people pay to see it, in person. That's why they had the Netflix. The numbers were extremely high. Former NFL player Antonio Brown, he actually recorded it off the big screen at the Cowboy Stadium, which got a lot of views as well because Netflix was having their issues, which that should be interesting coming with WWE's Raw.
I'm glad that this happened so they can address that going forward for sure.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing, honestly, last week I mentioned that I really wanted to see Mike Tyson knock out Jake Paul, but I'm not really surprised of how things panned out. And honestly, Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, they did what's called legal bank robbery because they made millions of dollars off of something that, to me, seemed very scripted. It seemed, you could just tell, there's people online, there's obviously those conspiracy things out there. But to me, it almost looked scripted because, Mike Tyson just kind of stood there. For a moment, it looked like the old Mike Tyson. And then, there was a point where it looked like there was, a tap on the shoulder. And I'm like, okay, maybe something weird's going on here. And it went the way that it did, and you know what? They pulled one on everybody.
I don't think this was a result of Mike Tyson being old. I don't think this is a result of Jake Paul not being good enough. There was obviously a lot of opportunities in that fight where the other person was kind of sitting there. And, I've seen some memes and jokes where Jake Paul could have just knocked him right out, right? He was chewing on his glove at one time, just punch him right in the face. Right?
Well, that's the thing though. Mike Tyson, I am a boxing. I was more of a boxing fan back in the day. I still follow it somewhat. But Mike Tyson, it's like a tick, like a nervous tick or something, where he's been biting on his gloves for a long time. He likes to bite, as we all know, with Evander Holyfield's ear and all that stuff. So biting's a kind of a Mike Tyson thing. But that's what was pointed out on the broadcast by former WWE announcer Mauro Ranallo, and I forgot about that. So I went back and looked. He did chew on his glove a lot back in the day as well. So it's kind of like a tick that he has in the ring. So yeah, it was weird because like Tyson just kind of stood there, and there was points in the fight where I'm like, Jake Paul could get knocked out here, but Mike's not doing anything. So it was one of those spectacles where they got one over on us. Everybody 70,000 people were there. Millions of people
they
watched
got one
it.
over on you, right? And here's the thing: I don't have a dog in the fight, as I mentioned before. I didn't really. And I still don't know who would really win in a real fight, right? But I did have an inkling that Jake Paul was going to win because of my wrestling knowledge background, knowing Jake Paul needs legitimacy to be promoted going forward. It's just like wrestling. Hulk Hogan beating a jobber does nothing for the jobber. And Hulk Hogan losing to the jobber does everything for the jobber, doesn't hurt Hulk Hogan.
Let's be honest, though. Did you? I mean, you heard the crowd though after the fight was over. You could hear all the boos because it was awful.
Those people weren't at WrestleMania 32 and 38 in that stadium.
But let me ask you this,
thought they were at something else.
Let me pose this to you because I don't know if you saw this or not, but Jake Paul is now calling out Conor McGregor for a fight. Here's what I'll say. I'm at this point, I've seen enough of what Jake Paul has done where you got me a couple times, but guess what? You didn't really get me because I honestly didn't pay for any of it. Let's be honest, yeah. I didn't. So I just spent time, which time is a commodity. But even if McGregor and him somehow do something, and I'm a McGregor fan, I'm not watching it because I'm not going to sit there and watch two guys script out, this whole event. If I want to watch something scripted, I'll just watch WWE and AEW and every other sports entertainment wrestling product.
Let me ask you this question. So there was a lot of promotion and a lot of talk about this fight that it was Mike Tyson's first time in a ring in 20 years. I'll add quickly that Mike Tyson, the last time he was in the ring, actually at the end of his real career, did end up on a 2-loss losing streak to some kind of nobodies, right? So even in a legitimate fight, he's coming on a losing streak, and that's 20 years ago. So there's no doubt that he's definitely not the Mike Tyson of the late 80s. But with that being said, there was the promotion that this is his first fight in 20 years. So why were we saying that when we know he had that quote-unquote exhibition against Roy Jones Jr. in 2020 during the pandemic? Why is that kind of being glossed over? Because it's that exhibition that made me be very well aware that that's exactly what we were going to get again. That exhibition actually taught me, we have seen this before. For some reason, that was an exhibition, but this was deemed a real fight.
It was promoted differently. They were promoted very differently. I would consider the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson event that we just saw, it's almost like the salesman's bait and switch trick where it's like, they built it up as two guys that are working hard. They're going to go in there and knock each other, around. Like Mike Tyson, those hype videos looked legit. Like he looked like he still had some dynamite in his hands. And guess what? We got a dud. So to me, it was just, it's like putting the, putting the wool over your eyes. Essentially, it's like, okay, thanks. But that's. And here's the thing: if I want to see that kind of stuff, I'll just watch wrestling. That's it.
Well, and that's kind of where we can kind of tie this right into the end there is because of the fact that the whole thing ended with, right, Mike Tyson saying he might not be done. Logan Paul said, I'd kill you, bro, or something of that nature, right? What do you put on? Let's say like you're betting man, right? We talked about over under 6 rounds. I won that bet because it was clearly over the 6 rounds. I thought it would be a decision where no one got hurt. Everyone shook hands and money was split. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. Over under Tyson and Logan Paul somehow connected in something. I don't know necessarily one-on-one, a tag team. WrestleMania Las Vegas.
I can't see it. I'm going to say no.
Okay. Do you see Logan Paul and Mike Tyson somehow doing a promotion of themselves going forward in some way, shape, or form?
I think Logan Paul is going to wrestle a current active WWE superstar at WrestleMania. I just don't see the whole thing. Like, I think there's a lot of bad taste in a lot of people's mouths about the Paul brothers and this whole Tyson thing. I think WWE would be smart to stay away from it, to be honest.
I mean, Tyson, obviously, his love of wrestling. He's in the WWE Hall of Fame. Logan Paul's obviously an active roster member. You know what I mean? They
I
should have
get
just
that.
essentially, I think this all should have kind of just been promoted under the WWE banner anyways. And when you talk about is promoted as a legitimate fight, I will say there were some other elements obviously in there that showed that this indeed wasn't a heavyweight championship fight. The rounds were different. The gloves were different,
Yeah.
so things like that obviously added into the fact that I was well aware we were going to get an exhibition. I knew that no one was going to get hurt. Mike Tyson or Jake Paul wasn't going to be heading to the hospital, that this was going to be something where money was changed hands. Everybody looks like a winner. No one's reputation gets lost at the end of this because Jake Paul's the winner. He can now challenge Conor McGregor, right, and still look legit because he's not a loser. Mike Tyson's still Mike Tyson, so he's box office wherever he goes. Regardless, he didn't get knocked down, so he's not a loser. And even if he did, he's still Mike Tyson.
Let's
Everyone
be
won
honest, though.
in the ring. Sorry, fans, that you thought you were
The
seeing
most
something
memorable moment
sports
was Mike Tyson's rear end, I think, on on the TV. So I think that was the most memorable thing of the night. I will say, though, to kind of put a bow on this part of it, the other match or the other fights on the card were actually decent. Like the two female competitors.
They were real fighting. They were real boxing. Yes.
There were some good matches, matchups before that. So I'll give a credit to all those individuals that were on the card. They made it a decent show because the female fight, the co-main, was pretty good. So overall, I thought the show itself was pretty good. The main event just kind of fell flat.
This was a good example of why wrestling has the stigma it does, because people want to believe, and they are very much upset when they want to believe that this is magic, and that's why they piss on wrestling and stuff so much, because they believed at one time and then they found out and they feel like idiots. This time they believed. People who don't watch wrestling, and I couldn't get them to watch WrestleMania for the life of me, watched WrestleMania. So I guess the bow I'll put on this is Netflix got 120 million people around the world to watch sports entertainment, right? And they didn't even know they were watching it. That's why I guess wrestling fans sometimes are not as stupid as you think, because at least we're coming in knowing, right? We fill up AT&T Stadium watching it, and we're not going to be disappointed when Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar's a dud, because we know what we're expecting to see.
We're already programmed that way.
We're programmed in. So welcome the rest of the world in. If obviously some of these people are younger, they weren't wrestling fans in the 80s and weren't duped back then into thinking it was legitimate. But hey, welcome aboard to the world of sports entertainment. We've been here a while. If you want to join us over on the WWE side of things and watch it full time, WWE, the best part about it is you know what you're getting heading in, and they're going to script it to kind of be entertaining, so it's not just nothingness for like 16 minutes of time.